Hi, so we are finally in week 4 now. This is the first lecture. In the last lecture of week 3, we discussed the overall intuition and idea of what a loop is. So we are just going to take it forward from there. So this is something that we discussed in the last lecture as well. That if you are planning to write a loop, this is basically the way you try to structure your thoughts. You have some statements before the loop, you have some statements after the loop. You begin by initializing some variables. Then you basically enter the loop body. Then you write certain statements that you want to be executed multiple times. You update certain values, and then you have a condition based on which you would like to move out of the loop. Now, one thing that we have to understand is that this is the way to structure your thoughts. Once we actually enter the realm of programming languages, these things will start changing a little bit. So the first thing the first variation that we are going to look at is where exactly shall we put the loop's condition, the condition based on which we either stay in the loop or go outside the loop. So the first variation is that we can actually put it at the end of the loop. So this is what we've been seeing it right from the beginning. This is what I told you, that usually you check this condition in the end of the loop, right? So this is what we saw in the previous week. Now in this case, the loop's body is executed at least once, right? Because basically you begin from here, you come inside. As of now, you have not checked any conditions, so you keep on executing these statements, and then at the end you basically check that if the condition to stay in the loop is still there, so you basically go back and these statements are executed again. If the condition has become false, you basically come out of the loop and you come here and execute these statements, right? So in this case, if you are putting the condition at the end of this loop, or at the end of the loop's body, then the statements before that particular condition are going to be executed. So this is just one way to achieve this when you're trying to write some pseudocode. So this actually brings us to the first loop in C. This is the do while loop. Okay. Now let us just try to find out analogy with whatever thought process we had seen till now. So essentially it says that there might be some certain C statements before, there might be certain C statements afterwards, and then this is basically the syntax. So you start with the term do. Okay, so do is a reserved word as in this you cannot use do for any other purpose in C. So for example, you cannot declare a variable with the name do. Okay, similarly while as well is a reserved word, so you don't really use while to create variables. So then basically this is a do, this is a while. Whatever you write in between, these are basically the statements that are supposed to be executed multiple times. So you can see now that essentially the condition part has gone out of the block that we discussed. But as I said, this is how programming languages do it, right? This is where you come into the world of programming from the world of, say, algorithms or pseudocode. So essentially this is what it looks like. You start with a do. There are some statements that you want to be executed, and then there is a condition. Now here, this is something that we have to understand. Till now we were basically saying that we need to find out the condition based on which the control will come outside the loop, right? So basically we have to break out of the loop, and that is why we needed a condition. Now, when we write a do while loop, it's basically the opposite, right? The condition that we provide here is the condition which basically is provided in order to stay in the loop, right? So this is the idea. You do something while something is true. Okay, this, I mean, if we try to convert it into simple English, so this is the idea. Do this while this is true. So let us say if you have the opposite, right? So if you know the condition, um, when you will actually want to come out of the loop, then don't worry, all you have to do is basically use that same not operator, the logical not operator. And if you know the condition to stay in the loop, if you want to find the condition to go out of the loop, you use the not operator, and vice versa, right? Because in Boolean world, uh, they are basically the opposite of each other. So in either case, if you have figured out the condition to stay, then you simply write it here. If you have figured out the condition to go out, then you simply put a not, and then you put it here. This is the idea. Okay, so this is a very simple example, that factorial pseudocode that we saw in the previous week. Let us say we want to now write a program to do the same thing. um, by the way, from now onwards, there will be a number of things that I'm not going to talk about explicitly in the lecture. There will be these comments. Okay, so by the way, whenever I write something after two slashes, this is basically a comment. A comment is something that is not meant for the compiler, right? So this is meant for you. This is meant for a human being, right? So the compiler will simply ignore these lines, whatever you are seeing after double slash. Okay, so from now onwards, there will be many concepts that I'll just talk about implicitly in the code, and it is your responsibility to open up the examples and read the code, right? And there will be certain things that I'll just introduce to you, but I won't really talk about in the lecture. As I have already told you, in the lecture we will talk about absolute basics. Anyhow, so this is an example of calculation of factorial with the help of a do while loop. So basically this is the actual loop where what you can see. So the idea is that I start with, so let us say num is the number for which I have to find the factorial. I have initialized the result with 1 actually here, right? And what I do is I keep on running this loop, and all I do is I keep on reducing the value of num by 1. So let us say I want to find the factorial of 6. The first time I enter this loop, okay, the value of num is 6. So then so this is a shorthand for multiplication. This essentially means result equals result into num. So then what happens is the result's initial value was 1. I'm multiplying it by, let's say, 6. Now the value of num is 6. So now after this particular two statements are being executed, result becomes 6 and num becomes 5. So this is a shorthand for saying reduce num by 1. So then this becomes 5, num becomes 5, result becomes 6, and the condition to stay inside the loop is that num should be greater than 1. And because num is currently 5, I will basically go back in the loop. This time result will be multiplied by 5 because num's current value is 5. So it will become 6 into 5, and then num will be reduced by 1 again. It becomes 4. I come here, I check it, I see, oh yeah, it is still greater than 1. So I go back again. So how long will this keep on going? So 6 into 5 into 4 into 3 into 2, and then basically when num's value is 2, uh, when I'll reduce it by one more, it will become 1, right? And this condition will become false. Okay, and at that point of time, I'll basically jump out of this loop. So this is the overall idea of loop, right? I do need an if condition here. Why? Because by convention, I know that factorial 0 is 1. So it is possible that user might actually give me num's value as 0. 0 is a valid value, by the way, to compute factorial. So in which case, if I allow this loop to run, okay, you just let's go back here. Okay, if there is no if condition here, what will happen is in the first iteration itself, the result will become result equals result into 0. So now result will become 0, right? And even though the condition is being checked, this condition is actually false, but this is something that you have to understand, that if you are using a do while loop, this loop will run at least once. Why? Because the condition is put at the end of the loop, so it is guaranteed to run at least once. Even if the condition is false, okay, the loop condition is false, still the control will enter, and the code will be executed at least once. So let us say if the user enters num's value as 0, my value of result will become 0. So this is why I have put an if condition uh, there's an if block here. So if num is greater than 0, only then will this loop run. Otherwise, as you remember how if works, if condition is false, I'll simply jump to this printf statement, right? And results value will not be changed. So the idea is if user enters 0, results value remains 1, and I can simply say that factorial of 0 is 1. So this is just uh, a condition that I have to put in order to cater to the 0 case. Now another way to write the same loop is if I start putting the conditions at the beginning of the loop, right? So this is the idea, that this condition thing I am now putting it the first thing in within the loop body, right? So if the condition to move out of the loop is true, I basically jump out. I do not execute these statements at all. Otherwise, these statements are executed and this cycle continues. So this is where my conditions are at the top of the loop. Now you remember that with the case of do while loop, basically not do while loop, whenever I'm going to check the condition towards the end of these statements, it is guaranteed that those statements will be executed at least once. And this is what happens with do while loop, because the condition is put at the bottom. So this is guaranteed, the control will at least execute the statements once. But here you can see that the condition is checked first, and if it is false, these statements, it is possible that these statements are never executed. Okay, so this is the idea. Now the equivalent in C is the while loop. So basically in do while I had a do here, and then I had a while, and by the way, the while had a semicolon there. I did not talk about it, but these are certain things that you have to observe on your own. So the while there had a semicolon. Here this while does not have a semicolon. Okay, so it is pretty much like an if block. So you don't put a semicolon when you write an if condition as well. So the same thing is here. You write a while and a condition. This condition again similar to the do while loop. This is also the condition to stay in the loop. Okay, so if you again, if you worked out the condition to move out of the loop, you'll have to use the not operator. But the idea here is that even at the beginning, right, if this condition is false, you never enter this part at all, right? So it is possible that if you write a while loop can it is possible that it is never executed. It is not even executed once. But with do while loop, it is guaranteed to execute at least once. So the same code, now you can see, uh, I don't need that if condition anymore, because all I'm saying is while num is greater than 0. So if user enters 0, my control will never go inside the loop. So this is the advantage. You can see there I needed an if condition to cater to the num equal to 0 case. Here I don't need to. If the user enters 0, basically I will never ever enter inside this loop. I'll simply come to the printf statement. So you can see that this is more compact as compared to the do while loop, because for preventing the num equal to 0 condition, I had to put another condition there. So basically here the control will only enter the loop when num is greater than 1, and it will keep on executing like this. And this is the point I have already talked about. We don't need an additional if here, which was required there to provide the execution of num equal to 0. Now, one question that might arise in your mind is that, why did we even think about do while loop if we have a while loop, right? I mean, while loop seems to be a better option, but usually, there might be certain cases where you may prefer a do while loop over a while loop. So basically, there might be certain situations where you would like the loop's body to be executed at least once, and then from there onwards you don't care. You put a condition, and if and only if the condition is true, then you go ahead. So let me give you one simple example. So this example contains both the loops in one particular uh, factorial program. So let's just say we had not yet checked if the user, what will happen if the user actually gives me a negative integer. So as I said, right, we were expecting that the user is a disciplined user, and that he or she will not mess up with me. But let us just say this is the case there, right? That the user might actually give me a negative number. So then what will happen? So this is what I have done, right? So I have added a do while loop first. So essentially what this do while loop is doing is something like this. I will first print a message to the user saying give me a small positive integer. Then I use a scanf to scan this number. Now the idea is that if user enters a negative number, I want to keep demanding one more one more, right? So basically if the user say it gives me -5 for example, I would repeat the same message, give me a small positive integer, and then I'll ask for one more input. So this is the idea. Until and unless user gives me a valid input, I just keep on I'll just keep on bugging the user basically, right? But the moment I get a valid input, and what is a valid input here? So the moment I get a positive integer, I want to break out of this loop and then do my actual factorial calculation. So now you can see the condition here is num is less than 0. So this loop, okay, this loop will continue till num is less than 0. So and num is something that user is entering. So as long as user keeps on entering a negative number, I'll keep on you know bugging the user. The moment user gives me a positive integer greater than or equal to 0, I'll actually come out of this loop. So now you can see that why I used a do while loop here, right? So I want this to be executed at least once because I want the user to give me this, then I want the input to be taken at least once. It is possible that I might need it more than once based on what the user gave me as input. So this is a classic case where I can use do while. This loop will run at least once. If the user enters a proper number, I will basically break out and come here. Otherwise I'll keep on staying in this loop until user provides me a valid input. And this one is the classic while example that you have already seen. So again, here because I'm using while, I don't need that if condition. So this seems to be a better choice. And so this is a very important observation that you should understand. It may seem that a do while loop runs one more time when compared to a while loop. This is a very common misconception that okay, so do while will basically run one more time as compared to while. This is not true. Okay, what is happening here is do while will run at least once, right? So if for example your conditions, your use case is such that your loop is supposed to run one or more times, then it is equivalent to either use do while or while. But if it is possible that in your particular case the loop may never run, okay, so there might be certain input combinations, there might be certain conditions under which you want that your loop does not run at all. Only then would you say that the option is to use while. Otherwise you can always use either of the two loops at any of the points, okay. But yes, as I said, for certain cases do while is better, for certain other cases while is better, okay. So you have the homework. I'm not going to talk about it. This we will discuss this on Monday. Thank you.